And this week on Ford News, we talk about the enthusiasm that is behind the Harris-Walz campaign after the Democratic National Convention. I guess we have to talk about RFK. Oh, and we have to get into some polling as well. That and more coming your way right now here on Ford News. He is Johnathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJohnathan5. I am Brian London. Follow me at MiamiRadioBeast. Johnathan, it was a very successful Democratic National Convention at the United Center in Chicago. A huge amount of enthusiasm coming out from that. But now the Harris-Walz campaign has to keep up the momentum. They're going to have some campaign rallies in Georgia this week, not just Atlanta, but down in Savannah as well. But the amount of volunteers and the amount of money raised has been absolutely amazing by the Harris-Walz campaign.
Yeah, so they've announced that they've raised well over $500 million. They have well over 400,000 volunteers nationally, right after through or leading up and after the DNC convention. They also announced that they raised $98 million just during the national convention. You have the figure of actually what was raised that whole prior week. And you also broke it down through Act Blue of actually the breakdown, which the number for the Democratic Party was significantly higher than the 538, which you put in the DNC and the Act Blue fundraising. But it was a great week, and we're seeing poll numbers now that are starting to really reflect the bump from the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah, from Sunday, 8/18 till today, the Act Blue raised $147, almost $148 million. And the amount total since Kamala Harris took the lead at the top of the ticket on July 21st, Act Blue has raised close to $750 million. Now, we have to let everyone know, not all of that goes to the presidential campaign. It doesn't all go to the Harris-Walz campaign. It goes to the Democratic National Committee, which means it gets distributed to a lot of the down-ballot campaigns as well. But that is a significant amount of money, which allows them to provide for a lot more resources on the ground. And Johnathan, not just the regular linear television ads, but a ton of digital ads as well, which is what's really important right now.
Yeah, digital ads are real important. And then I also seen where the Harris campaign has come out and said that they're finding now that independent journalists or content creators on social media actually have more power influencing the news cycle than what actually the CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News does as far as on social media. And that's why you've seen them even at the Democratic National Convention, where they've invited content creators to actually have their own spot, just like, or even independent journalists on X and other social media platforms have their own area to where they can kind of do their thing and report on the convention. So there's definitely a different shift, and there's also spending in states that we typically wouldn't see. Like they're spending some money in Texas, they're spending some money definitely in Florida, which Brian, we both agree that Florida out of the two is most likely in play for the Harris campaign. You also have North Carolina, who is now starting to lean a little bit towards Harris. You got Georgia, who's leaning a little bit now towards Harris. And if you remember that one, it was the biggest eye opener for me as far as the Biden campaign, was that he was losing Georgia by some polling up to 9% or 9 points. And now that's kind of went even. Nevada's kind of went even. So the polls are definitely shifting and are continuing to shift in Harris's favorability.
The interesting thing is that the tactics that the DNC and the Harris-Walz campaign have taken, this big tent kind of tactic where they're trying to bring whoever. Listen, you're a Republican, but you're unhappy with Trump. Come on over. You're an independent. Come on over. You're a libertarian. You don't want Trump to be elected. Come on.
Yep.
Whoever it is, listen. We're going to be the party of democracy. We don't care. Listen, let's just worry about getting through this election, and then we can all work on our differences after. I think that's really important. And you've seen a lot of the infighting between the progressive side of the Democratic Party and the more centered side of the Democratic Party kind of stop. I mean, someone pointed out on TV today, you saw Bernie Sanders speak, right? Definitely far to the left side of the Democratic Party. And he's calling out billionaires. And the next person to speak was J.B. Pritzker, who said, I'm a real billionaire. And Trump isn't. And those two things just happened flawlessly. It just went one into the other. And no one said anything about it because it's just everyone on the same front of Donald Trump cannot be elected.
Yeah, and the Republicans actually in the DNC, you had Adam, you had quite a few others. You had the former lieutenant governor of Georgia that spoke, and their main communicating to the people was that we can disagree on policies later, but right now we need to elect Harris because they believe that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. And they said, once we elect Harris, then we can start debating and having conversations about policies on how to move this country forward.
Yeah, I think, the sense is like, can we get this whole thing back to like some sort of like kind of normal sense of politics where we're going to argue policy versus policy, but we're not arguing about, insurrections. If we can do that, we might be in a good place. And I think that's a good place to be. I know the enthusiasm from state to state to state has been great. You talked about the volunteers, but a lot of this money that has come in is helping the Harris and Walz campaign actually open campaign offices all throughout many of the swing states. And that's just more resources on the ground and the ability to message. We constantly talk about messaging on this podcast, and it's not just about the ability to message via social media or message via digital ad. It's also about messaging via knocking on doors and making phone calls, the old school way of messaging in politics.
Yeah, grassroots on the ground is still the best way politically to get and also to start the enthusiasm and keep the enthusiasm going. Like we've seen in Tennessee, not only today, but yesterday in a deep red district where there was hundreds that gathered for Harris. And I'm not saying that she's going to win Tennessee because obviously she's probably not going to win Tennessee, but it just shows that there's enthusiasm in the air when you can actually get areas like that to come out and vocally support Harris, even in those red districts. But you're absolutely right. Like we've got to continue. And we talked about this off the air to where I started rambling off numbers to you, favorability, polling, this polling, and Brian's like,
Don't do it.
Don't do it. And I'm just like, hey, I'm a statistics guy. It shows the mindset or the behavior that is out there for Harris versus Trump. But the only way that those statistics actually come true is if Brian is right, is if everybody ignores them and just goes out and votes this election cycle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, representatives from the Harris campaign will tell you their internal polling is a lot closer than the forecasting and the polling that you're looking at. But you're right. The polls are coming in that favoring Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But listen, man, I'm still just triggered by 2016, right? Like we're looking at the polling, Hillary's going to win, and then she didn't. So, it's nice to see, but no one can let up. We cannot let up the work that we're doing and the messaging. We just got to keep the foot on the pedal because I'm telling you, man, I just can't trust the numbers. I know you're a numbers guy. I cannot trust the numbers at all.
Yeah, and what we're seeing too, on just polling that's starting to drop now, is that the endorsement for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., which we'll talk about him on the next segment, but it's having no impact on the polling at all. And I've said from the beginning that the RFK Jr. Voters or potential voters are never Trumpers, are small amount of Democrats that feel like they're been casted away or their voice doesn't matter. But I don't see that influence in this election. And according to 538, the national average have actually increased for the Harris campaign the moment that RFK literally left.
Yeah, so we'll get into RFK next segment and what him dropping out means. But by the way, on 538, I think it's important that we tell people, in case you don't know, Nate Silver, who was integral to 538, has left there. He has started his own service, kind of a Substack situation. So when we say 538, we're not necessarily talking about Nate Silver. He has left there. Another presidential
Well, we can put it in
forecast.
contrast a little bit. So
Yeah, go ahead.
538 right now has it 57.2% Harris and 43.7% as national average. And then the Kennedy dropout was August 23rd. And right now, as of August 24th, of national average, according to Silver Bulletin, it has Harris at 48.8 and Trump at 44.8. So it's a 3 point something spread versus a 4% spread.
Another guy I love to look at, if I want to look at numbers, is Jack Kirsting, and he has the JHK presidential forecast. He was right in 2020 about Biden. Right now, he has Harris at 55%, Donald Trump at 45%. He's got Harris getting to 280 electoral college votes, Trump to 258. In the popular vote, Harris gets 50%, while Trump gets 48%. So, listen, a lot of things are trending the Harris Walsh way, but again, I just see all these numbers, and I want to shut my computer. I don't want to look at any of it.
I open it up
Sorry,
and read them.
I want to look at it. I don't want to trust it. I think that's what I'm saying.
Well, Brian, how about you don't have to open up your laptop? I'll just tell you about them.
Earmuffs. I'm not hearing anything.
You can find significant polling that is correct or will give you a base to go off of your own thought process on who you think is going to get elected. Now, everyone will go back to 2016, but they always forget to mention the good old FBI director coming out with that great investigation just days before
By the way,
the election.
James Comey, great James Comey, just endorsed Kamala Harris. Great.
He can shut the hell up. Yeah, and he can shut up. So I mean, he basically broke DOJ or Department of Justice policy, even doing the investigation, but for one, making it publicly known. And he's admitted that he probably didn't maybe make the right decision at that time, but I'm just done with it. Done with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay if I'm totally fine if I never hear from Jim Comey again. Just hashtag just saying. So things are trending in the right direction for the Harris and Walz campaign. I think the good thing is, and we were talking about this as well, is that that'll kind of translate down ballot, and some of these governor races, Senate races, congressional races will feed off of that momentum.
Yeah, and if you remember right, even the controversy or of Biden leaving, their number one concern wasn't necessary. I mean, they felt Biden was going to lose, President Biden was going to lose the election, right? But their main fear was that he was impacting down the ticket voting, and that they could lose more seats in the House and they could lose the Senate at the current trends that they were seeing nationally, and now we're seeing a complete kind of reversal in that. And the majority of the majority of the battleground states, you're seeing Democrats actually picking up steam, and in most cases having leads in those states. We just need to make sure that everyone's voting down the ticket so we can elect Harris.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think, listen, when people go listen, there's plenty of times, and like Kentucky is one of those states, right, where people voted for a Democrat and Andy Beshear, but may not have voted
Yep.
Democrat for the other offices that were up for election on their ballot. However, there's a good chance, and especially with some of these things that are on the ballot, legalization of marijuana, obviously, codifying abortion, those two things are on the ballot here in Florida, IVF, what have you. When people go out to vote for those things, they may not, in other cases, have even gone out to vote. So those things have brought them out to vote. They're going to vote down ballot. Probably a lot of people just are like, it's just, I don't know if you're not a movie guy. There's a movie, Summer School, way back in the day, like maybe 40 years ago, right? And they're taking a standardized test. Yeah, they're taking a standardized test, and it's just like they're running out of time. They're all just like C, 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 C. They're just going down and picking C because they read somewhere that if you just pick C, they'll do a good job on the standardized test. You go to the ballot box, you get your ballot, you're like, okay, yes, I want abortion to be legal. Yes, I want the legalization of marijuana. I don't know what the hell else this is. I'm just going to go Democrat, 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 and boom, there's my ballot. A lot of people kind of do that when they go to vote and not necessarily digest everything. So I think the more people you can get out to vote that are for some of these measures and for maybe one or two of these candidates, maybe they love Harris, they don't have any idea who's running for Congress, they'll just vote down the line, and that'll help everybody on the ballot.
Yeah, down the ticket is definitely going to help. And that's why we've always said that elections always start locally and then work their way up. It's not the other way around. It's not down. It's not like the Reagan or the Republicans trickle down economics. That didn't work. Trickling down for voters doesn't work. It's always building your base and then moving up. And that's why, like, even with this election, and kind of go off topic a little bit, that's why I don't like third party right now. It's because they always start from the top and they're trying to think that they are automatically owed or justified to be president of the United States, but they haven't started anything at the local levels and started to build up their base all the way up like the Democratic Party has and like Kamala Harris is doing right now.
Yep. By the way, I saw a tweet this morning of someone that said they were going to vote for Jill Stein, and I wanted to throw my phone, my laptop, and punch my television. But it's okay. I need to control my
I seen that
anger.
same one, and she's getting some serious rhetoric where she was saying something about Jill Stein, and I will block any account that won't vote for her or whatever. And now you got like millions of accounts, like basically, but I don't know if you want to use bullying, but they're definitely going after her.
Well, let's not be stupid. Speaking of third parties, RFK Jr. I don't know if he's in a party or on a different planet. He is dropped out of the race. He's endorsed Donald Trump. We will talk about what this all means. You're listening and watching Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Johnathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJohnathan5. I am Brian the Beast London. Follow me at MiamiRadioBeast. Oh, by the way, Johnathan, I've joined you, kind of. I'm on TikTok now, too. I'm not debating anyone. I may put up a sports video, maybe a politics video, or it may just be some wacky, weird thought I have in my brain. So people can go find me on the TikTok as well. We have a Ford News TikTok account. Speaking of Ford News accounts, go subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. It's I believe it's at Ford News 1 is our YouTube channel. You can follow us on X at Ford News Pod, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast entity where you're listening to this podcast right now. That would help us out. And when you go to the YouTube, don't just, smash that subscribe button, hit the like, the thumbs up, and the bell, but interact with us. Make a comment or two. Tell us how sexy Jonathan's hair looks. He spends about a half an hour on it. So make sure you do that. We have to talk about RFK Jr. I really don't want to. The man who had a bear in his trunk and made his kids, take a whale head for a ride, and he's got some worms in his brain. I don't know what's happening there, but he dropped out of the race and endorsed Donald Trump. What does this mean for the race, Jonathan?
Nothing. Like nothing. Like it means absolutely nothing. Harris doesn't change anything. The Harris campaign doesn't change anything. We're looking at a guy that is a convicted felon. Oh, like Trump. We're looking at a guy that had allegations that he, and I want to make sure that we're clear, allegations that he sexually groped a babysitter. Oh, something Trump has had allegations of. He's basically had multiple different things. He's had affairs of 32 plus women, something like Trump. He's been friends with Jeffrey Epstein, something like Trump. He was on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs, something like Trump. I mean, it's just Donald Trump 2.0 with some Democratic policies. The one thing that he's more dangerous on than what Donald Trump is he's an anti-vaxxer, and his conspiracy theories are to the extreme. Like Donald Trump's conspiracy theories, most of the time are just stupid, but his are to the absolute extreme. So bad that Kerry Kennedy today and the Kennedy family has basically disavowed him and stated this is his exact words. Kerry Kennedy says she is disgusted by her brother Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporting Trump and a flagrant efforts to desecrate her father's memory. The Kennedy family has disavowed and disassociated themselves from Robert. And for a whole family to do that, you know you're just not a very good person. And the one thing about the affairs is whether it was the cause or wasn't the cause, we'll never really know. But we do know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s wife unfortunately took her own life, which was a tragedy in
Ex-wife,
its own.
ex-wife,
Or
obviously.
ex-wife,
He
sorry,
he's married.
ex-wife,
He
ex-wife.
is married.
He's
He's married
married
now
now to
to Cheryl Hines, who
Hines.
famously was
Yeah,
on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah.
yeah. So the guy just is, and you can go with his voice, but we can't really make fun of his voice because it's an actual disease that he actually has. But um, the guy's a mess, like just mentally a mess. Um, Characterized, he's a mess. And honestly, if you put Trump versus RFK on who's the worst of the two, I would actually say RFK is probably the worst of the two. RFK Jr. is the worst of the two, just because he claims to be Democrat, uh, but he is just batshit crazy.
Yeah, well, I don't know if RFK Jr. is the worst of the two because uh, Trump has managed to brainwash almost half of America, so it's a little bit of a different situation. I will say this though, you know what's sad to me is 20 years ago, in 2004, there used to be a progressive radio network called Air America. I used to listen to it. Rachel Maddow was on there. Al Franken was on there. There was a bunch of great
Oh,
hosts.
mhm.
Monetarily, they just
Yeah.
couldn't make it. But on the weekends, there was a great show called Ring of Fire, hosted by a lawyer named Mike Papantonio and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And they actually talked a lot about environmental stuff. And RFK Jr., when it comes to the environment, he knows his stuff, like just knows it so well, the science, all of that stuff. And so back then, I was like, okay, so someone is talking about climate change and global warming and all this stuff. And I kind of respected RFK Jr. back then, but that was 20 years ago. It's not the same RFK Jr. that is out there talking about, vaccines and all this craziness stuff now. It's just, he's gone off the deep end beyond the deep end. And they actually removed him from that show, and there's another co-host now, and what have you. But it's kind of sad when someone just continues to dive deeper into the conspiracy theories. But the bottom line is this: is that listen, he can go to the mountaintop and shout that I'm endorsing Donald Trump, and as you said, it just doesn't make a difference.
Oh, and here's the things that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has said about Donald Trump in the past. Trump, here's one. Trump scammed American workers. He promised to bring back manufacturing, raise wages, fix trade deals, close the carried interest loopholes, help small farmers, but everything Trump achieved were things that the Republican machine wanted. He got tax cuts for people like Jeff Bezos, deregulations on special interest, and uh, gave away our agriculture. Then he also says, just to quell and speculation, under no circumstance, capital letters, under no circumstance will I join Donald Trump on an electoral ticket or a position on certain fundamental issues. Our approach to governance and our philosophy on leadership could not be further apart. So that particular one was on 5/10 of 2023. So a little over a year ago. And nothing has changed with Donald Trump. So people could say, well, he had a change of views, but nothing's changed with Donald Trump. And if you go to his X account and just go months, like even a month ago, he was talking about how horrific another Trump presidency would be,
Correct.
but
Yep.
yet here's endorsing uh,
Well,
Trump that he says is a danger to our democracy. So that leads to only one conclusion for me, is that he is just mentally, cognitively not there anymore.
here's another thing is, and I think this has to be said. Um, RFK Jr. has been wanting to meet with Kamala Harris to talk about a possible position in her
Yes.
administration. And Kamala Harris and the Harris Walls campaign have basically said, listen, dude, we're not talking to you. You're a crazy person. He felt shunned by that. So he went talking to Donald Trump and found someone. Hey, Trump says, sure, I'll give you a position in my cabinet, whatever it takes. CIA director, sure, whatever, because I don't care about anything other than myself. And that's why he's endorsing Donald Trump. He really wanted to align himself with Kamala Harris, and Kamala said no way. But Jonathan, we have to talk about the Kennedy family, because they have certainly not embraced their family member.
No, not at all. And honestly, even before this, even before him dropping out, um, they endorsed Biden instead of him, and basically had wished that he would not run on the Kennedy name and not run at all. And then when Biden, of course, dropped out, and then, of course, you got Harris, they then endorsed Harris, the Kennedy family did. And now you have Kennedy going the complete opposite direction of what we known of the Kennedy family and the great history surrounding that last name in the political world, and going clear to the right with Donald Trump. And let's also keep in mind too that one thing that I just want to mention real quick that even bothered the Kennedy family is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually blames Ukraine for the conflict and not Russia, even though Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s son actually volunteered for the Ukrainian military at one point. So it's just completely mind-boggling that he would go clear to the right. But the only reasoning would be it's because, like you said, previous weeks he had reached out to the Harris campaign and said, "I will give you my endorsement if I am given a cabinet position." And they didn't even respond. Like, it was just no response according to report. They wanted nothing to do with that at all.
So the Kennedy family has obviously been outspoken. Back on the 23rd, when a couple days ago, when RFK Jr. gave his endorsement to Trump, they released this statement. We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future, a future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walls. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story. That was 2 days ago. This morning, Kerry Kennedy actually went on MSNBC with Jen Psaki, who was obviously President Biden's spokesperson for a while in his administration. Now she's a host on MSNBC. Kerry Kennedy went on this morning and had a pretty strong statement.
I'm outraged and disgusted by my brother's gaudy and obscene embrace of Donald Trump. And I completely disavow and separate and dissociate myself from Robert Kennedy Jr. in this flagrant and inexplicable effort to desecrate and trample and set fire to my father's memory.
The Kennedy family, ever since his announcements to run, have been very outspoken, and throughout this whole process. So nothing, uh, nothing in anyone's words would say that he has any support from the Kennedy family. I've actually looked into it to try to see if there's anybody that officially supports him outside of maybe his daughter or son, and there's nobody. Like, nobody in the Kennedy family is coming out and saying, wait a second. But it's the complete opposite. Everyone that you see interviews of, or you look up sources to see that, they're all just, there's something wrong with this guy. And you always remember, as a family member, if you have one family member that's kind of shunned out, it's because that one family member definitely had a huge problem, or and just couldn't align themselves or get along with others. And that's kind of what I see with RFK Jr. And it's sad to see that we went from, in the political world, running for president, from John F. Kennedy Jr. to what we currently are seeing on display, who has now endorsed Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. You know, coming from the state of Massachusetts, the Kennedy name means something. So to see RFK Jr. go off the deep end, it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. And you know, for people who are looking, I want to vote for someone that's not one of the two parties and this and that. Okay, fine, but don't pick someone that's absolutely crazy, just absolutely out of his mind. Just, it's not the way to go.
The same allegations as Trump. Like, the same allegations. It's almost a mirror image. Outside of the 34 felony charges and maybe some fraud charges, he has the same allegations as Trump. The same. He's and Trump also, a threat to our democracy and trying to overthrow the 2020 election. But outside of that, there's no difference between RFK Jr. And Donald Trump in my eyes.
Yeah, both good friends of Jeffrey Epstein. So there's that. There's always that to think about. All right, we're going to take a break. On the other side, it's our favorite segment we do every week. We will get to the Ford Fact Check. That and more coming your way here on Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Johnathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJohnathan5. I am Brian London. Follow me at MiamiRadioBeast. Johnathan, it is time for our favorite segment of the week. It's time for the Ford Fact Check. All right, Johnathan, we have to talk about illegal immigration. Give us some facts about it.
Yeah, so outside the CBP report for July, what we want to make sure people understand is that immigration is protected under the Constitution. Immigrants are protected under the Constitution. You can literally go and Google up their constitutional right. The law they are breaking, though, is improper entry by alien. So there's a lot of people that state that they are here legally. Technically, yes, but they did break a law while entering. But the Constitution also says that they have the right to due process. The Constitution, under section, let me make sure that I have the right one. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 actually specifically states that they can enter through the port of entry or on U.S. soil in between the port of entries. As soon as that happens, of course, they are breaking the law as far as entry, but then they're giving the ability to seek asylum within the 365 days. While going through that process, if they do get stopped by immigration patrol or asylum patrol, then they go through the asylum process. Through that process, only 35% of immigrants are actually granted entry. But the Constitution and the Supreme Court has also ruled that they are granted due process when entering. So it's just not a forced out or thrown out to the side like some of the Republicans would like for you to believe. They still go through a different uh, process, or a process that is well defined within the Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 of the Constitution. And there's also been multiple Supreme Court cases on this. ACLU has actually spoken on this and filed multiple lawsuits. But what is currently being spoken to on the right hand, or the right wing, is not correct. So they are constitutionally protected once they come in.
You know, the interesting thing is that it is Congress that has the plenary power to make laws in regards to immigration and migrants and illegal aliens and all of this stuff, right? This is all in the hands of Congress. And we were very close to getting a border bill, to getting an immigration bill done. But who killed it? Donald Trump killed the immigration bill. Not the Democrats, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden and the Democrats wanted to pass stronger immigration protection and a stronger bill. And Donald Trump got to Mike Johnson and the rest of the Republicans and says, you have to kill the bill, because if it passes, that's good for Biden and bad for me. And I need to win this election. So that means you need to kill the bill. So we would have had a stronger border bill, but Donald Trump is the one that killed it. I think we cannot stress that message enough, because those people out there that are saying, well, you know, it's just immigration, the immigrants are just coming over in millions, which is not true. Hey, your guy's the one that killed the bill, not us. I think that's extremely important to get out there.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand that President Biden, on his second day in office, also pushed for legislation on the border. There was a Senator Langford bill that had bipartisan support and would have passed until Donald Trump came out vocally against it. But then Biden was forced, of course, this year to issue an executive order to help Border Patrol and significantly decrease some of the numbers that were increasing over time. But back to the Senator Langford bill that you were talking about, the Border Patrol union president actually supported that bill and actually called it the strongest and most significant legislation for border in his lifetime. And it was shot down by the Republican Party, all for political gain, for, of course, Donald Trump, who is significantly down in polls even for this. So we're going to continue to move forward and push the truth. But when you see immigrants, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're here illegally. I hear a lot of debating on TikTok to where people are saying that are MAGA or identify as MAGA, that are saying that they're now approaching immigrants and asking them for their legal citizenship. And I'm telling you, you don't have to give them that requirement. They have no obligation to ask that from, or you have no obligation to give that to them at all. They are not law enforcement. And as long as you're here and you're contributing to the local and federal economies, I really don't give a crap other than that.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, why can't we just do the right thing in this country, and rather than, play political games? But, that happens on both sides. It just frustrates me. But, there would have been stronger border protection. But of course, Donald Trump decided to get involved, which is totally makes me angry beyond measurement, for sure. So, Johnathan, we've got a lot going on this week. As we said earlier, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, they'll be down in Georgia trying to pick up some traction in that very important swing state. And we'll see where else they go. We're getting down to the nitty gritty, right? We're getting down to just a couple of months left in this electoral season. And I know the polls are going one way, what have you, but I would just urge everybody out there, if you are for the Harrison Walls campaign, to get involved, go volunteer, go knock on doors, go make phone calls, do whatever you can, right? Because we can't stop. We can't let up. We can't take our foot off the gas.
Yeah, and make sure you take plenty of liquids out there. Like today in Omaha, Nebraska, it's 100 degrees. So just make sure that when you're doing it, you're also safe because unlike Donald Trump, we care about you and we just don't want your vote. We actually want you to stay alive and be healthy, and then vote on, of course, this November for Harris. But yeah, get out there, get involved. It's part of your duty to me as a U.S. citizen to be involved in the election process, and that's why I have always advocated for a paid day off, even as being somebody who's worked a corporate job and been a boss of hundreds of people. I've always said that that one day, we should all just shut down and go vote and make sure that more than 138 million of 333 million are actually voting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Vote early if you can, and get it done before Election Day, because there'll be sizable crowds and lines and all of that, and you don't want to deal with that. All right, that'll do it for us on this edition of Ford News. Make sure you do follow us all over social media. Jonathan's at FordJohnathan5 on X. I'm at MiamiRadioBeast on X, on Insta, on TikTok. I'm everywhere. Jonathan's usually found somewhere in the middle of the night arguing with MAGA people on TikTok. Go find him there. Please smash that subscribe button on the YouTube channel at Ford News 1. And wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate you always for supporting us and listening and watching this amazing, awesome experience that we call Ford News. We'll see you next time.